Now, there are some good days in the office, and then there are some that are truly excellent, and I think today probably falls into the latter category. Because not only do we have the Speed Triple RS, I've reviewed it before and it's truly excellent, but also one of the bikes that I've been most looking forward to riding this year, the Speed Triple RR. So in this video, we'll go through all the specs and details. I'll tell you exactly what I think of them and also which one I'd buy if it was my money. But before we get started, a massive thanks to OptiMate for sponsoring this video. OptiMate is the leading brand in battery chargers and maintainers. And for beautiful, expensive bikes like this, you're probably going to garage it when the weather's bad, so it's important to keep the battery looked after to make sure it's ready to go as soon as the sun comes out. Now, they sent out their OptiMate 2 Duo for me to test out, and not only is it a brilliant charger and maintainer in its own right, but also it works with both lead and lithium batteries like the ones Triumph used in the Speed Triple to save a few kilograms of weight. No need to change the settings or anything, just hook the OptiMate 2 Duo up and it'll recognize the battery type and charge it appropriately. The other thing that impressed me is the range of accessories. So once you've got the tether hooked up to your battery, you can also use it as a USB port to charge your phone on the go or get a DC adapter to power heated clothing. So once again, a massive thanks to OptiMate for sponsoring this video, and there are links down in the description where you can find out more about their awesome product range. Now, first up, let's go through the similarities of these two bikes, of which there are many. They get the same 1160cc inline triple engine that had a massive boost in power for this generation of bikes. It's basically gone from a very quick naked bike to within touching distance of those true super nakeds, and out on the road it really does feel absolutely rapid. You still get all the benefits of an inline triple, so it's nice and smooth and it's got plenty of torque in the mid-range, but it just now has this ridiculous top end that makes it absolutely fly. They get the same frame and subframe and tank design, and much of the chassis is pretty much the same wheels as well. And along with that big power increase, there was substantial weight loss for this iteration. To be honest, on the road it doesn't really feel like a big beast of a bike. It's really quite agile and nimble, and really it doesn't feel that much bigger than a street triple anymore. There are some differences in the suspension and the tires, which we'll get onto later, but the braking setup is identical. So we've got top-notch Brembo style Lemma calipers, steel braided hoses, a span and ratio adjustable lever at the front with a radial master cylinder, and you also get linked braking now, so it applies a little bit of both brakes on your behalf, completely unnoticeable when you're out on the road, but Triumph say it substantially reduces stopping distances. Tech-wise, you've got a 5-inch TFT display, and you can use it to manage all manner of lean-sensitive rider aids, plenty of riding modes, phone integration for turn-by-turn nav, cruise control, self-cancelling indicators. It really is bang up to date. And for this iteration, it retained the keyless ignition, but now it incorporates the steering lock and the fuel filler cap. So the updated Speed Triple RS launched first, and then about a year later we got this, the Speed Triple 1200 RR. Although Triumph will say that the Speed Triples are predominantly designed for the road, this one takes it in a much more sporty and track-focused direction. So firstly, and most obviously, the riding position has been adapted to suit that style of riding. The seat height remains the same. I don't think they really wanted to redesign the seat and the subframe, so it's 830mm down to the floor. But what they've done is remove the flat bars and fitted some clip-ons, and that shifts the bar position 135mm down and then 50mm further forward. It's not a full-on proper sporty riding position. A couple of weeks back I was riding the F3RR from the MV Augusta factory. That really does feel like you're down and on your wrists. This is a bit more of a halfway house, I'd say. If you're coming from a naked bike or a retro or something like that, it's gonna feel very focused and sporty. But I think if you come from a super sport or a bigger, more focused sports bike, then this is gonna feel pretty comfortable. Now, they've also moved the foot pegs so they're they're 15 millimeters up and 26 millimeters further back, and that helps to pivot the rider triangle on the seat, which has stayed static, and also it'll give you a bit more ground clearance and lean angle on the track. So if you're doing track work, then there's no doubt that this riding position is more appropriate. If you're doing majority road riding, then the RS is almost certainly going to be more comfortable. I can just about get on with this for a couple of hours on the road without a break, and so if you want it to do track and road riding, then it can totally do that. But hands down, at road speeds, I'd take the RS any day because it just gets that little bit more weight back onto the saddle. Now, the second biggest difference would be wind protection, because you've got this little fairing on the Speed Triple RR. Clearly the RS has no wind protection. There is an accessory fly screen, but it doesn't really do anything in terms of wind blast. This bike though, it'll cut a bit of wind. I mean, if you're riding in a very relaxed road position, it'll just kind of flick it up to your chest. But if you do get tucked down, you can probably get it, you know, cutting in where your nose is. Whether it's actually beneficial or not really depends on whether you're just going to ride around on the road sat up like this. If you are willing to maintain a tuck, if you can ride like this on the motorway for a while, then you definitely do feel the benefits. So whether you're going to find this advantageous or not really depends on how long you can maintain that sporty riding position. Now, one feature on the RR that I do think will be an advantage for pretty much everyone is the semi-active suspension. I mean, the RS is really well spec'd in that department. It gets Öhlins front and rear, and it really is top spec stuff when it comes to mechanically adjustable suspension. But on the RR, again, it's Öhlins front and rear, but this one's got their smart EC2 system. Firstly, it means that you can adjust the damping on the go through the switchgear, and you've got 10 notches of damping adjustment in the fork and shock independently, and also 10 notches of anti-dive. So it offers some real convenience in terms of making quick changes, and it gives it that immediate versatility. No need to get any tools out, you just go into the settings and back it off when you want a more comfortable ride, or firm it back up if you want something a little more sporty. Now, I'm not sure about the exact specs of the spring rate and the range of damping, but I've found that with the road riding that I've been doing, with them both backed off to their lowest damping setting, this one remains pretty firm, whereas this one feels a little more cushy and comfortable. Now, another difference to highlight is the tyres. So the RR gets Pirelli Supercorsas and the RS gets Metzeler Racetech RRs. I'm not sure if I'd advise this as being a deciding factor in your purchasing decision though. Firstly, if you're going to be track riding, then you're probably going to wear them out pretty quickly anyway and then swap them for your favourite choice of track tyre. And then secondly, if you're riding predominantly on the road, these are both excellent tyres with bags of grip for road speed. So yeah, tyres ought not to be a factor, but one thing that almost certainly will be a factor for a lot of people is the styling. Now, to me, the RS is by no means a bad looking bike. I like the aggressive sort of stance of the bike. I love the single-sided swing arm. The choice of fairly subtle paints and graphic looks quite classy to me, and also you get the textbook try and finish, so little things like the stitching in the saddle, the quality of the components, the feel of the switchgear, the little Triumph logos here and there. It really does look as good as it gets. But let's talk about the RR, because this has to be one of the best looking bikes that's come out in the last couple of years, and I reckon it's going to be one of its main selling points. And yes, the fundamental shape of that fairing is totally complementary to the rest of the bike, but I think the masterstroke is this line in the paintwork that continues the lines of the fairing up through the tank. Then you've also got the blacked out side panels here and the carbon radiator shrouds, and it leaves you with a bike that's very dark and blacked out at the bottom and then colourful and bright along this top bone line, and that gives it that modern cafe racer look. Now, one thing I do know is a bit divisive in terms of Triumph styling is the twin headlights, be that on the Speed Triple, Street Triple, Rocket or Tigers. Personally, I don't mind it, and I quite like the sort of frowny daytime running lights on this bike, but if it's not your cup of tea, then the Super Veloce style single small round headlight on this bike might be a massive plus. Overall for me, this is the much better looking bike, and I do like the extra use of carbon. So along the bottom of the tank here, down on the radiator shrouds, you've got a little bit in the cockpit, and then both get the carbon from mudguard. So beautiful design and lots of extra bits of carbon, all sounds good in principle, but there is quite a substantial price difference between these two bikes. The RR is almost touching 18 grand, which is, I think, acceptable for the competition that it's going up against, but the RR comes in at 15.5, so it's 2.5 grand difference between the two. And so with that, which which one would I go for? Well, I think my heart would say the RR for the looks. As a special thing to own and something to have in the garage, for me it doesn't get a lot better than that. But realistically, for most of the riding that I do, I think the RS is the better choice. You'd save $2.5 grand. The riding position is much easier to get on with when you're riding on the road, and it's still a pretty good looking bike. It's just not top tier for me like that one. The only thing that's got me slightly torn is the semi-active suspension. I'd really like to know what this bike felt like with that suspension and this riding position. I think it would make for a heck of a road bike if that was the case, but I don't believe there's anything in the works. A massive thanks for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to know which one you'd pick down in the comments below. And if you're new here and you want to see more head-to-head comparisons like this and more motorcycle reviews, then please do hit subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.